My vocals. How now, brown cow? How now, brown cow? Ian. Schotanus. Hey, got it. Alrighty, guys, welcome to Talk of the Trades. We have Ian Schotanus on the show today, also affectionately known as the HR guy. Full transparency, he works with us as well, and we love Ian and his entire team. So shout out to Haley and Susan and everybody that's always helping us. You guys are awesome, and we love you, Ian. So we appreciate you, and thank you for being on the show today. We're excited. You're our first guest.
Hey, pleasure to be here. Always happy to spread the word of HR.
Heck yeah, awesome, man. Also joined by co-host Aaron Waters, who's in the same building but different room. What's up, bro?
Yeah. Heyo. Yeah, I remember before I even knew Ian, the HR guy on Facebook was a fun read. So very excited to be partnered up with him and love getting him here so we could talk shop.
Yeah, 100%. So awesome. I'll kick us off. So with that said, Ian, I guess, for the people who don't know the HR guy out there, just give us a little insight on kind of your background. How'd you get started with big picture consulting overall?
So yeah, my background, I actually started as blue collar. My first job was in the Navy, doing advanced electronics and mechanical work. My workspace on board my ship had the 3 largest AC units on board. One of them supplied the captain directly, so had to be good and make sure that system was working at all times. And went through all of that and got out 4 months before 9/11. Started bouncing around doing different technical jobs. I did some tech work. I did retail sales at Best Buy, computers and home theater and everything else. Then transitioned back to the tech world, did some more repair work at Geek Squad. Then I was fired because I had to fix all the broken stuff that a supposedly senior technician fixed, and we weren't on incentive pay. So I had to fix all of his stuff. There was never any consequences, and he got paid more. And I lost my temper, scared a CSR that was a couple rows away, and next day I was fired. Didn't matter how good of a tech I was, anything like that. And I just said, well, that sucked. I don't want to be on that side of the table anymore. So opportunity presented itself to start learning about HR. And now I've been doing that for the last 15 and a half years between previous company that I spent 10 years bouncing all over the country, meeting tons of great folks in the trades. And then 5.5 years ago, right before COVID struck, I branched out on my own and created Big Picture Consulting with my wife, Susan. And here we are continuing to roll, growing clients, growing employee base. And so I get to face all of the exact same struggles all my clients do.
Nice. Yeah. We're super jealous of your hat wall back there. That's what we want to be aspirationally. So important question. Is there a Leadhub hat up there yet?
I don't think I got a Leadhub hat when you guys had me on site. That's one that I'm missing here. So
yeah, we rebranded. Our old hats weren't worth it. So we got to get the new ones. Yeah. I'm curious.
Yeah. In your room.
Did your passion for HR come about because of that incident? And you're like, I got to learn everything about HR because of how I got screwed and how they didn't manage it properly. Like, where did the passion for HR come from?
It really came from more helping small business owners who didn't have the first clue on how to deal with problematic employees like me. Very opinionated, blue collar. We're very independently minded. We think mechanically, so there's a problem and we go to fix it. We're not really stopping to think about, is this the right way to fix it? Or if I go down this path, is it going to cause other problems? And it's missing that sort of connection that lands so many people in trouble, both employees who are doing what they feel is necessary to achieve a goal, and employers who are most employers in the trades are technicians who happen to own a business, not business owners who happen to work in HVAC or plumbing or electrical. So it's a change of that mindset that's really required. And that's what I try to help business owners transition to do.
Nice. And you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but in the trades, we're working with blue collar guys who are very mechanical, right? What have you found, like from an HR perspective, that you got to really be honed in on to make sure that you can effectively communicate with them and help find solutions to like some of those unique problems that you might face because of that?
Well, it's going to be shocking for people to hear this, but there's not very many HR professionals that work with the trades. And that's because most of my peers have no idea how to communicate effectively with blue collar workers or blue collar employers.
Yeah.
It's a completely different mindset and psychological positioning that requires direct talk. You have to speak directly to them. You have to be speaking to solutions, not just risk assessment. And this is how you cater to a problem to make it kind of fizzle out. No, you need to solve a problem. Sometimes you need to smack them upside the head to get their attention. And so I'm very uniquely qualified to do what I do for the trades and, really help just put out these fires and avoid the need for lawyers to get involved.
Yeah.
There's something on Below Deck, and you say something very similar. So I want to tee you up for your slogan. But Below Deck, one of the captains always says, like, don't embarrass yourself and don't embarrass the boat. Thumbs
Captain
up.
Lee.
Yeah. And what was your statement that you repeated over and over when you were here?
Represent the brand.
Yeah.
That everything is about representing the brand. How did your choice to do X, whatever it is, how does that help represent the brand? Everybody needs to stay on mission. And from leadership and the CEO all the way down to the line level customer support, everybody needs to have the same goal, and that's serving the customer and representing the brand. That's it.
Yeah, I love that.
When you say that of representing the brand, is there, without mentioning names or if this is a positive one, is there a contractor that you've had experience with nationwide that you say top down, they represent the brand and here's how they do it?
There are a ton of great companies out there, and the ones that really have represented the brands, and this is going to go into something I know we're going to talk about later too, but Sky Heating and Air, Travis Smith and Heather Warba out in Oregon, they built this great company that was expanding all over Oregon, and a waiting list of people to join their team, because at every turn they represented the brand. The culture was king in every sense of the word. And that made it very attractive to private equity who bought. And then, it's a culture shift just by default. And, seeing the changes that happen over time under new leadership and things like that, it really tells you what you're dealing with. But Tommy Mello is another, awesome example, in multiple fields of how you represent the brand at the highest level and demand that level of representation up and down the chain.
That's awesome.
The list is endless.
Yeah. So even for like other contractors who are like listening to this, because what you just shared is like gold, what are, ways that they can get their team to understand what the brand is and how to kind of like stay in line and march to the same kind of beat? Because I would assume like some people, they understand like, okay, I have a brand, but how do I get people to like follow and buy in and make sure that my expectations are clear?
So first you have to understand and you have to determine what it means to represent the brand. So that's your mission, that's your core values, everything that a lot of contractors, those that are still in the mindset of technician who happens to own a business, they see that as fluff, and they may not invest as much time as they should into it until much later. But the sooner you can get that level of stability of what it means to represent the brand in place and selling it. You're selling this vision, not just to your external customers who are paying the bills, but you're selling it to your internal customers. And just like any other marketing, you need to repeat it. You need to have brand awareness inside and out. And that's how you get people to not only follow the script for what direction you want the company to be going in, but they're going to hold themselves accountable because they're going to identify for you, for management, who's not representing the brand, who's making their life in representing the brand more difficult. And it's not from a place of snitching or causing problems, but it's part of the solution to better and always enhance and protect the brand.
Yeah. And that's something at Leadhub we're always, trying to live our core values and ensure that our team is doing that and really not being, BSers about it. One of the things that my biggest fear is, like, we talk about having these core values and we don't live them. I've been in different organizations where they're like, oh yeah, we believe in this and this, and it's not really true. It's a fallacy, so love what you shared there, because yeah, you got to reinforce that brand awareness within the organization as well. A lot of us just by default say, well, why? Like, you just should get it, and sometimes you got to reinforce it.
And the other part of it that's often missed is that even though every company has employers and managers and supervisors and line level, when you look at it at two-dimensional and put leadership at the top, that's not actually what I have found is the case. Leadership is one of three core teams in every business, and you're all operating at the same level underneath the brand. You're all supporting the brand. And when you all have different roles and responsibilities and liability. So leadership's role is to make sure everybody else knows what's expected of them to support the brand. It's just as important as those that are executing on the tasks required to literally represent the brand to external customers. And it's no more or less valuable than support structure. Even the person who's cleaning the break room, they're serving a role in representing the brand. And that needs to be understood. And everybody needs to be empowered to throw a red flag, even if it's that lowest line level, holding the CEO accountable. Hey, I don't think you really meant this message to go out. I don't think this helps represent the brand. You know what? You're right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for don't take it personally. Don't take it as an attack when somebody questions whether or not your actions are supporting the mission that you gave them.
Yeah.
Thank them, because complacency can knock any of us on our butts at any time.
Oh yeah. I think accountability across the board and healthy conflict, communication is so key, and we got to have trust and be able to, tell, whether, like you said, it's the lowest line person or the CEO, we're doing them a disservice if we don't share that with them. So
absolutely.
Yeah. As a lot of stuff has changed here, over the last 4 to 5 years, especially with the acquisitions and everything, I'm sure we could talk about the cultures that have been sold and then changed over. I made the mistake of mentioning private equity in a call. We were onboarding a client that they left us about 6 months ago and came back pretty quickly. And I just even half mentioned private equity buying leads at the bottom of the funnel and not focusing on brand awareness. And Dennis had this amazing marketing campaign, 3 really good ideas for them that really talks about respecting the brand and making it more about not just external but internal. But even my mention of PE, the guy's like, just so you know, I own a private equity firm as well. I'm like, well, okay. Well, I wasn't trying to dog it. I was just saying that's the tactic. But I think the PE term is so interesting right now.
It really is. And just like in every industry, there are different players. They have different business models. They have different focuses. It doesn't make any of them right or wrong. And that's why I do what I do on a universal basis. I honestly don't care what your business strategy is. I'm not a business coach. my goal is to keep the conflict, the interpersonal conflict, to a minimum, and keep the government out of your business so you can succeed or fail on your own merits. That, and that's the role of HR. But private equity, we talked about blue collar. Well, most private equity is absolutely supremely managed by pure white collar, and it's more number focused and accounting focused rather than the relationship and understanding those independent mindsets. And that's been a real challenge for a lot of PE firms as they've taken these great brands, and not all of them have survived. It's not necessarily good or bad, it's just the results. And there's a lot of different factors that come down to human relationship.
Have you seen any guys and gals that either exited and now are starting their second, or just newer entrepreneurs that may not be private equity backed? Are there any tactics that you're seeing that are different in 2025 in how they're approaching HR? Because if you don't have the big guns, the buying advantages with manufacturers, you've got to be unique in some other way. I got to believe some HR trends have changed over the last 2 to 3 years.
Oh yeah, it's definitely been. It's kind of settled down because COVID really amplified the whole PE market and really launched them in, because HVAC, plumbing, and electrical companies are critical, essential services, especially when everybody's locked in their homes for multiple years. So that's where it's come down to really two camps of business development. Are you building your company to sell? Is that the owner's core goal? Or are you looking to build a generational brand? Mm-hmm. And you kind of, again, as long as you go into it knowing that these are the two core directions that you can go, you just have to play with the numbers. And if you're building to sell, you need to maximize that gross profit. If you're building a generational, you need that sustainable profit. It doesn't have to be as high of a profit margin, which gives you more room to work with to compete price and resources with those PE-backed firms. So it's all strategy, and just you have to know the game and know the pieces. In HR, it comes down to how much are they spending on benefits. And that's where the bigger the company, the more advantage you have. But even there's other support companies that have kind of tried to been tapping into that. There's PEOs for co-employment situation already that helps smaller businesses buy into group workers' comp rates, group health benefit rates, and things like that. I'm a big proponent for health sharing type programs, medical cost sharing programs, rather than traditional insurance. So I've got a great business resource and partnership on that I refer out, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but there's solutions for everybody. And again, it comes down to whatever your value proposition is. You can use the fact that you're a 20, 30, 40-year family-run business. You can use that as a selling point, because so many people, technicians, may have worked at a bigger shop that went to PE, and then they ran away because they were seen as a cog, not as a qualified technician. So that's a selling proposition when you're recruiting. And lots of different factors. I can go on all day.
Yeah. Let's clarify a little about your scope of services. And I had the experience of, we were on a level funded or self-funded plan for a while, and then we got bigger, started having kiddos within the organization, and had to pivot on that pretty quickly. But interested to hear about, big picture consulting. We know that you help us with recruiting, you help us with payroll through, we use Bamboo as a software. I know you guys probably have another software you use as well. What's a general scope of services for you guys towards a trades company?
So we offer services. Where we start with our services is the core foundational documents, the employee handbook, your safety program, all your onboarding docs, employee management documentation, discipline and termination, all that fun stuff. all the paperwork contractors just love to have to deal with. We make sure all of it's completely set and personalized to your brand. And then unlimited on-call support. That's where my employee just did X. What's this new law? How do I fire this person and not get sued? We're always on call for our clients, whether they're big enough to have an in-house HR person that we're supporting, or if we are the primary resource for on-site management. That's where we start. From there, we offer compensation plan management support. So managing overtime compliant commission programs, piece rate programs. We'll analyze your current system with labor budgets and compliance. We've built a couple of our own compensation plans over the years to help you manage that and take a lot of the burden of calculating payroll off your plate. And then finally, we offer to step in as the bulk of your in-house HR department. So that's where we can take over processing your payroll, helping with that recruiting and onboarding, through different applicant tracking systems. We have our preferred software systems, but we're starting to branch out and be willing to plug into other systems as well. But finding that solution, and really you hire my team instead of having to spend 2, 3, 4 times as much, bringing somebody in-house to do that work when you may not even have enough work for one full-time person, but you would have to, and you get an entire team with huge amount of experience, knowledge, and resources behind us to make sure you're taken care of.
Yeah, I think, you came in and did our 2-day when we had a little bit of turbulence within our office management and HR situation, and had offboarded and onboarded. And I think one of the things that was really cool was the stay interviews. Can you talk a little bit about stay interviews and the value of those?
Absolutely. So it's always relatively easy to identify when somebody's leaving, the traditional exit interview. I'm quitting. Okay, why? Well, because you don't pay me enough. You don't respect me, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. That's all normal, and everybody knows how to deal with that roughly. Sometimes it's a little bit too dramatic, but with stay interviews, you want to find out what you're doing right. What does your team like and recognize about your brand? So when I come on site to do an overall system review, I'll sit down with as many employees as possible to do this stay interview to find out what they think that it means to represent the brand. What can they identify? What do they actively like? And then not necessarily what they don't like. That's a little too cliche, but I focus in on what's something that you would change if you had the power. Just one thing. What would make your job easier? What do you think would help the brand as a whole? Let's explore the concept. And the more employees that you can talk to about this and identify those things, you're finding out what is working so that you can continue doing it. And you can identify trends and opportunities to improve the culture for everybody and present the opportunities. And as you hire and fire employees, or there's just natural turnover, that culture may change. So it's not just about doing it once and saying, okay, we've got this figured out. No, people change, opinions change, they evolve over time. Outside situations change all the time, and that may impact how people are feeling in their work. Stresses that they're feeling, it may just cause friction with something that they otherwise like about working there at your company. But because of external influences, it may be rubbing them the wrong way now. And if you don't invest the time and effort to discover that quicker, it's going to fester. It's going to turn cancerous. It's going to cause problems. And then you have cascading issues that you may have to spend a while backtracking back to a source and figure out, okay, and I've seen companies have to go all the way down to bare bones, owner operator, and then rebuild from scratch. And they thank me.
Wow. So when you do those stay interviews, Ian, and then you provide that data and information back to your, clients, like what are ways that they can like take and implement that so that they can take, action on some of the things that they heard that could benefit the organization?
I mean, of course, information without taking action is meaningless, kind of like having policies without accountability. You have to take action on it. So when I do an analysis of the answers that I get and I see trends or opportunities and present them, it really comes down to what is found, that what type of action you need to develop, or what programs, or what, do we see a storm on the horizon that we have to figure out how to get ahead of? Or are there some direct, easy wins that we can do that will show immediate results to help gain momentum? Pick that low-hanging fruit first, and then let the rest of the problems kind of settle some more so that you can get to them more easily without burning yourselves out as leadership. Because all the burden comes down on you guys to actually manage the brand.
Yeah.
And something that most employers don't understand about company culture, it doesn't come from the leaders. It doesn't come from the CEO. It comes from the line level employees and how they are responding to leadership's effort to define what the culture is. So it's cyclical. It's a cycle of renewal and everybody interacting with each other.
Yeah.
And, again, that leads all back to HR, because we're the ones that are charged with making sure everybody's communicating with each other. And in the trades, you have hardcore blue collar, out in the field, almost independent agents out there driving around in branded vehicles with tons of tools, and they're that face person with the customer, and so they get to puff up their chest and they say, yeah, I'm the man, I'm making this happen. You have the leadership who went through all that themselves normally, and they're in charge of keeping everything running. And you have the support team, which is more predominantly white collar, they're more administrative, things like that. And there can definitely be different, everybody's at a different stage in the process, and they could all be speaking different languages.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure they're communicating with each other and they understand each other's roles, all as part of what it means to represent the brand.
Gotcha. That's awesome. One other thing that I'd love to get your take on, and you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier in kind of your services, but this whole idea of like performance pay, because it's such a big thing within the trades, and like, what are your like top tips on that? I always see people in the Facebook groups, saying like, what do I pay on commission? How do you handle this? And we're even thinking internally at Leadhub, like how can we apply some of these principles to certain roles to like retain our best talent? So I'm sure you get a ton of questions on it. So what is like your top advice in terms of, performance pay and how to structure it and how to handle it overall?
So performance pay comes down to one key critical component: budgeting.
Okay.
And which is what leads people in different directions. You can, all pay systems come down to a few different variables, and it's just how they're all mixed together. You have hourly. So you're just paying based on the amount of time that it takes to do the work. You have spiffs and piece rate, which are a flat dollar amount that's going to get paid based on accomplishing a task, regardless of how long it takes.
Yeah.
And then you have commission, which is based on a percentage of the revenue involved of that task. That's really every system that's out there is a variable of one of those three, or two or more of those three. The biggest challenge that people have, the easiest thing to budget is commission. Because, okay, it sold for this, I budgeted 20%, bam, here we go, it's easy. Well, what they're not counting normally is some very basic compliance factors like overtime. You have technicians, CSRs, installers. All of these positions are non-exempt, which means you have to track their hours, you have to pay overtime, regardless of how you're paying them. If you're paying a CSR salary, that's great. That's nice. It's a benefit for them if they work less than 40 hours. If they work more than 40 hours, guess what? You still owe them additional pay on top of their salary.
Yeah.
This is federal law. It's not even by state. And employees don't have the legal right to waive it. So even if they sign a paper saying, I 100% of my own free will agree to this, they could change their mind and sue you overnight. And they win, period.
Wow.
About 95%, in my experience, 95% of contractors using any form of incentive pay are not doing so compliantly. In California, that might bump up to like 98, 99%, because it's almost impossible to run compliant payroll in California. And that's a whole different podcast.
That's just my favorite conversation with Ian. I love talking about California politics with Ian. This is fun.
sounds like a lot of people need to call you, Ian, to make sure that they're doing their performance pay right. So
my general position is that every contractor needs me on retainer.
Nice. Love it. So
some quick HR audits then. If I'm a contractor running my business, let's say I'm a $1 to $4 million shop. I mean, that sounds like one of the most important is compensation. Performance pay is something to look at. What would you say are the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or kind of the fundamental 101s, if you will?
Yep. So compensation compliance is absolutely critical. Proper timekeeping, making sure you've described the pluses and minuses of how you're paying. If you're doing anything other than straight hourly, you need to have descriptions so employees know how to expect what they're being paid for. And then on the execution end, making sure that you're doing overtime correctly. So that's compensation. Your employee files, they have to remain secure, they have to remain organized, and they have to be filled out correctly. I-9 audits are one of those sneaky little things that the government can come in. And last time I checked, it's about $12,000 per I-9 violation. So if you have 15 employees and you've never completed an I-9 correctly, that's 15 times 12,000.
That'll stink you.
Department of Labor can just come in and smack you overnight. You have to get your paperwork in order. And as an added bonus, if you're using your payroll software to do onboarding, you're sending out those documents. One, not every system includes the I-9 because it doesn't directly relate to payroll. So they may not even be supporting it, and you may be relying on incomplete information. Second, because it doesn't have anything to do with payroll, if you just send it out and the employee fills out their part, even if they submit a photocopy of their social security card and driver's license, the process is not done yet. You have to take certain steps. Third is addressing complaints. You have to keep communication going. Without communication, you are just tap dancing through a minefield and you never know. And Aaron started chuckling at that because he remembers exactly that nobody is immune to this. Yeah. So leadership has to always be proactively trying to see, are there any problems? At the same time, not creating those problems, not creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. So again, that's why you need to engage HR to how do we communicate effectively? We're looking for this goal. How do we get there without crossing the legal lines, without creating the problem that we're trying to prevent, and so on. So that's where you have to have that partnership with HR, whether it's internal or external. And then lastly, remove emotional bias. If you're too connected to a situation, you're gonna react, not respond, and that will land you in court way too often. I got fired because I lost my temper with a senior tech. Now magnify that when you're an employer, when it's your business, your brand, and you lose your cool. it can cause worlds of hurt that there's no insurance to cover it.
Yeah. One piece of advice you gave me, Ian, because I'm like the emotional guy, and so I need to rely on like these different mechanisms to make sure like I don't overspeak or, like I will just, for whatever reason, want to try to make people feel better. But one thing that you taught me was, especially like when you're letting somebody go, right? Because that's an emotional situation for both sides. And, my thing was like, Ian, what do I do? Like when they start asking me all these questions, like about why are you firing me and things like that, or letting me go. And you told me it's like, it's at this point, it's a decision. It's not a discussion. Right.
Yep.
And that really helped me be like, man, okay. Like, at this point, no discussion is going to change the situation. It's a decision that's been made. And we're just moving forward at this point, so, hopefully that'll help somebody else out there that maybe has the same struggles as me. But that was a golden piece of advice that I've given many others since then. I think it's been a couple of years now, but it's helped me tremendously. And so I thank you for that, man. It's been awesome.
And just to add to that, to add a little bit more flavor to it, you're not always going to make the right decision. But once the decision is made, it does not help the brand second guessing yourself.
Yeah.
So that's why I'd rather have too many questions than too few from my clients. Finding out that you fired somebody and now there's a problem when I didn't know that firing somebody was even on the table. There's only so much I can do. But you use the information that's available to come to a business decision, as qualified of a business decision as possible. You have to remove that emotional bias because somebody may have been with you for a long time. You may go out and have beers occasionally, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
You can be friendly with your employees, but if they're your best friends, you're opening yourself up to that very difficult situation. And you're not always going to make the right call. You're using the information available to you as best as possible. As long as you handle it correctly and don't cross those compliance lines or turn it into a wrongful termination situation, you're allowed to make a bad fire. You're allowed to terminate somebody for an inaccurate reason. You're running off of bad information. You've got conflicting complaints. You have to make a judgment call. You're not always going to make the right one.
Yeah.
But you have to stand firm on the decision, because once you've talked about termination with somebody, you can't unring that bell. Even if you allow them to talk you out of it and change your mind, the trust is already broken, them to you.
Yeah.
And within yourself, which doesn't help represent the brand. So you have to follow through, even if you end up a week later having to fire the other person as well, when you really wish you could just unring it and switch the two. You have to own it. That's one of the responsibilities and burdens of leadership.
Yeah. Is there any downside to the opposite end of the spectrum? Like if you have zero emotion?
It makes things easier, but you're more vulnerable to culture backlash.
Gotcha.
So you have to balance the being friendly with and being human, or against that need to be purely business. It's about the numbers. It's not about the personality. It's not about your personal struggles. You need your internal customers to work with you to represent the brand. So if you're purely calculating, and this is a complaint that many do end up having about bigger corporations that buy their companies, or if they're tucked in to a growing empire, not always private equity, they lose that humanity. And that's why one of the things that I occasionally put out there for my marketing is keeping the human in human resources. Because everybody's talking about AI, and I do not use any generative AI. I rarely even rely on it for basic searches. Closest I get is note taking, just to summarize a call, and then I never look at the notes because I just remember it and do what I need to do. But but it's there. There's a record there. But it is about the humanity when you're working with people, and technicians are not going to go AI.
Yeah.
You're going to have technicians. You're going to have leadership. You're going to have interpersonal connection. So you have to deal with it correctly and as a human.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. Interesting. There definitely a lot of stories, but really quickly, one that we had, back in like 2016, 2017, I made the mistake, and I've shared this with you, but when we terminated someone, and we had given them extended leave for a medication that they didn't have in, and I found out they were not being truthful. But then when we had the termination, I offered to let the health insurance go for another 60 days to cover, because they had just had that medical thing. And then I got sued for medical discrimination. And it was really just me being kind, which I'm not normally. So why
Oh, you're an absolute sweetheart.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. But like that has caused me to then maybe hold on to people way longer than we should have because of what happened back then. And if they're not, respecting the brand, and if they're not getting clients the results they need, then we probably aren't the right fit. And so I think bringing you on in some of the stay interviews, you helped us address a couple people that were in that position at the time.
Yeah, I kind of pegged them, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, awesome, Ian. You've been sharing so much awesome knowledge with us today. We appreciate you just, joining us and being here. And any last little pieces of information or nuggets you want to share with the people?
Don't be afraid to ask questions, whether it's HR, whether it's business. Look for help, look for that external set of eyes to help make sure you're seeing things clearly. Again, ask your questions. The worst case scenario, they're not willing to share, which may mean that you're on the right track. But find a mentor, find somebody you can trust to help you remove your emotional bias from your decision making. And that will keep you clear of more trouble, let you be better able to see things coming or developing that you need to address. Again, whether it's dealing with external customers or internal.
Yeah. And you've been that voice for us, Ian, and your team has been awesome and bouncing stuff off of. I know Aaron and I have had some sleepless nights, but you've certainly helped us there. And Susan too, she's a sweetheart. And I reached out to her the other week and she helped me on a couple of things. So love your team. And how can people find you on social?
So I am literally HR guy on Facebook. That's my primary. Ian Schotanus on LinkedIn, and you can always reach us through our website, thebigpictureconsulting.com.
Awesome. Well, any last words, Aaron?
We're doing a webinar with Ian with our clients here on April 2nd. I believe we'll put the show notes out there, but excited. Yeah.
Yeah, y'all aren't going to want to miss that one. That one's going to be a good one. We had a really solid one with Power Selling Pros and now with Big Picture. So bringing some value to the entire community. And we'll put everything in the show notes. So if you guys want to reach out to Ian, you certainly can. And don't hesitate. We're a testimonial. And if anybody out there want to know more about our relationship, don't hesitate to reach out because more than happy to share. But so yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Ian, thanks for being our first guest, man.
Thanks for having me.
This is history. When we have millions of viewers, we're always going to remember the HR guy. Number one in our hearts, man. Awesome.
Later, y'all.
Well, take care. We'll see you.